Great Slave Lake. Annie moved from Barrie, Ontario to Victoria in November 2020 and has been a member of Siska since the summer of 21. She has her paddle Canada Level 2 kayaking skills and not only enjoying being a member of Siska, but also take advantage of what the organization has to offer. In addition to kayaking on local day trips, Anne has been fortunate to have a longer kayaking adventures that included Norway, the Broughton Archipelago, Baja, and occasional summer trips to Georgian Bay, Ontario, which is a jewel of a place to paddle. Shall we welcome Anne Duvall? Anne?
Thanks. I'll also use the microphone because otherwise you may not be able to hear.
The bulb for the other projector should have been delivered to my house today, so this won't happen again, hopefully.
Well, thank you for asking me to present. One of the nice things about this opportunity is it let me live through the whole experience again. I actually moved here exactly 2 years ago today, November 23rd, 2020. I also want to really thank Siska and to have the opportunity to be part of this organization. It's really been quite remarkable, all of what you guys accomplish here. So thank you to everybody who makes this organization tick and all the people that I have had the pleasure of paddling with since I've become a member. So, so this presentation is actually going to be done in 2 parts. The first part is going to be a little bit about Yellowknife. Some people that I've paddled with I know have lived there before, and you may know more about it than I do. But I thought it would be just kind of fun to kind of give you a little bit of an intro to Yellowknife for those who haven't been there. And then the second part will be to about the actual paddling experience. So we'll start off here with the map. So this is where we are down here.
Yeah.
So we flew via Calgary, and Yellowknife is all the way up here. So that's a long ways to go.
You gotta put the microphone on the other side.
Oh,
And
do
it
you want to
was
do that?
really fun to, you know, it's just the excitement when you're in an airplane, you kind of see the land coming up. And so this is the first introduction to Yellowknife. And this is the welcome committee at the Explorer Hotel, the nice polar bear that we have there. And this is the view from my hotel room. So this is called Frame Lake. And there's a walking trail that goes all the way around it. And over here, which I guess is, you can't see very well, is the Department of National Defense. This is the big museum. And the legislative buildings are over here. So Yellowknife derives its name. Some people say it's from the Dene, some people say it's from the Chippewa Indians, but they used the copper-colored implements, and so they called them the Yellowknives, and so that's where the term Yellowknife comes from. Yellowknife has a population of about 20,000 people, and it's the major big city in the Northwest Territories. So these are the 33 flags representing the 33 municipalities, and this leads to the museum. So this Northern Heritage Center has a lot of amazing things in it, and it's certainly someplace that I would recommend you go if you go to Yellowknife. So it's got lots of things about history and mining and animals and all kinds of stuff. So there's just a few pictures here. This is about the Dene Trail. So look at that. To me, it looks like the vascular system. I mean, I'm a physician, so
Yeah.
I see that kind of like the back of a retina or something. But anyways, you can see all the trails. That's pretty impressive. This rock is like 4 billion years old. So I don't know how they figure out how old these things are, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. And these are amazing baskets that are in the museum as well. So you could spend several hours in there. So So the Legislative Assembly is a really beautiful building too, and it was built in 1993. And prior to them building this building, the legislative meetings were held throughout the Northwest Territories. They traveled from place to place. This is the inside of the council chambers. And so behind this zinc wall, you can see up top, oh, here we go again. Oops. So this is part of a frieze. So this represents the Rankin Inlet. And you can see it around the other side too. And it's really about the ice as it comes and it goes through the different seasons. And there are different shades of blue, gray, and green that are really hard to capture in these windows. But you really get a lot of beautiful light coming into that chamber. This is the council chamber. So there's 19 representatives of council. They're independents. So they represent there's about 2,300 residents represented by each of these council members, and half of them are from Yellowknife. And those MLAs that are elected then choose the premier, and the premier chooses the cabinet, and everybody else becomes the opposition party. This is a very interesting room because the acoustics are quite something. If you make a noise anywhere, you can hear it anywhere. So it means that you can't even whisper to the person who is beside you. There are no secrets in this room. And these, all around, there's 9 paintings that were commissioned. These are painted by A.Y. Jackson from the Group of 7. And if you're familiar with the Group of 7, none of the paintings actually have buildings in them. They're all natural. So these were commissioned by the mining companies to put in this chamber. This is a lovely sculpture made of marble. And the marble is actually made, it's compressed from fossils that are somewhere between 4 billion and 2.5 billion years old. Again, I mean, you need to be a geologist to understand this stuff. But this rock was brought in from the east arm of Great Slave Lake, and it was carved by a combination of Indigenous and Francophone artists. And the representation of this is really to honor all of the people in the Northwest Territories. Going into Old Town, one of the nice things about Yellowknife is it's small enough that you can walk it very easily. And so at the entrance of Old Town is what they call the rock wall. And this also is a representation, an artistic representation, really to honor all of the different people who live in the Northwest Territories. What you can see here on the right is a bronze version of that same sculpture that was in the Legislative Building, and is part of the extension of that whole concept of inclusiveness. What you can see here, these are the Dene men playing their drums. So that particular weekend that we arrived was an event called Ramble and Ride. So people were encouraged to ride their bikes or to ramble, just walk through the main town. And this was part of the opening ceremonies, which was kind of fun. And there was also a throat singer there. This building is called Bullock's Bistro, and it is now a heritage building built in the 1930s. It was originally the home of the first trading post, the trading shop, and they outgrew this place, and so they moved across the street. It's called Weaver and DeBoer, and when I was there in August, that place was the most amazing place. If you wanted anything, any clothing for like minus 40-degree weather, take a ride up to Yellowknife, you'll get everything you need. So this was summertime, and it was well stocked. So imagine what it would look like at this time of the year. This is the inside of Bullock's Bistro. And this is just the plaque about the Weaver and Divorce store. Again, just a great place to go. More eating places. The Wildcat has had a wonderful stew there for lunch one day, and this Northwest Territories Brewery is a wonderful place for beer and burgers. Okay, so just, one of the things about Great Slave Lake is that there's a lot of big fish in there. So this big pike is for sale at a little trailer on the street in Old Town. Now, Ragged Ass Road, anybody heard of that?
Yes.
Because what I was told is that's the most famous road in all of Canada, but I had never heard of it. So Tom Cochrane actually named his 1995 album after this road, and he actually wrote a song called Ragged Ass Road. So interesting story about why that actually got its name. So it used to be called Privy Road because they had all these outhouses that were on the road. This is a dirt road that's right close to the water. So this fellow, Lou Roche, I think his name is, he owns 6 out of the 9 properties there. And this was in 1970. He was commiserating with some of his friends, having a few beers. Everybody was doing very poorly because prospecting wasn't working very well. Nobody was making any money, so they thought, we should call this Ragged Ass Road because we're all ragged ass poor. So what they ended up doing, and because this guy, Luke, felt that he had the rights to name the road whatever he wanted because he owned the most business or the most lots there, so they decided to just put up the road sign, Ragged Ass Road, and they just did that. And people kept stealing it. They kept on taking it down, and they kept on putting it back up again. And the city was not willing to actually acknowledge the name Ragged Ass Road for this particular street. And it continues to be just a dirt road. And up until recently, it wasn't even on the map because they refused to do that. So this fellow, Lou, died in 2013. 2015, they finally put this on the map and they put these actual road signs up. So now if you're a tourist and you go to Yellowknife, you can find these Ragged Ass Road license plates and other signs in a lot of the tourist shops, and people are all over these things. So this is the Pilot's Monument on Pilot's Hill. So this is, on the top of this hill, you get a 360 view all over of Yellowknife. And this was actually a monument to the pilots because they really helped to open up the Northwest Territories for mining and trapping and lots of other things. So very special part of their history. These are float houses. So this is seen from the top of that Pilot's Hill.
Way out.
So people live in these places like boat houses. So in the summertime, they row into work. In the wintertime, they come across the ice. And then during the shoulder seasons, when there's not enough water, not enough ice, they actually have to board in town so that they don't fall in or whatever. So this is another picture of that.
That's neat.
And this is Air Tindy. So Air Tindy is the place where we start our trip for kayaking. So just to orient you, so Great Slave Lake to me, even from the time that I was a kid, looks like a big bird. So there's Yellowknife, and this is where we're going. These are our camping spots here. And I want to just point this out to you. This is a big peninsula, very, very long, called the Pethai Peninsula, and we're going to probably be showing you more about that later on. So this actually shows you how we actually got there. So we were actually the first group to go to Eppin Island, which is this one right here. So half of us went in a boat this way, took us 4 hours. The other half flew across. Actually, this is where we went to in 40 minutes. So Great Slave Lake, that you may know, is the second largest lake that is totally within Canadian borders. So the Great Lakes, Superior and Huron are larger, but they share a border with the United States. Great Bear Lake is larger, but this is the deepest lake in all of North America is over 2,000 feet deep. And they say that the ice is at least partially on the lake for approximately 8 months of the year. So again, you have to be careful when you go there. Okay, so we're on our way. So I decided to go by boat and then go back on the float plane to get the experiences. So here we are. You can see there's 2 tandems on here, and then we've got 3 singles, and on the float plane there are 3 single kayaks. So the tandems come in very handy. In terms of the group of us, there's 8 guests and there's 2 guides. But the tandems are big haulers, so we can take these big kitchen pots and tables and other stuff. And what I found on the trip that we did to the Broughtons last year is that they're also good for safety. There was, last year there was a woman who was pregnant who wasn't feeling particularly well, and one of the paddlers fell and hurt her knee, so she stayed more in the tandem. Otherwise, like this time, we just all rotated through. But it's good for safety, and as I said, it's really good for hauling things. So here we are arriving on the south point of Ethan Island. It's a beautiful day, and there you can see our tents set up. So you can see that the trees are skinny, sparse, but again, just beautiful, beautiful day. Nice, clear water, but cold. And it didn't take long for the fishermen to get started, because that's one of the reasons for going there. And I even took a fishing rod, and I thought, I have to immerse myself in this total experience. So that particular day, like we arrived in the boat around noontime. The plane arrived before us. But really spent the afternoon just divvying up all the food. We had to divide that up amongst all the kayaks and all the other gear, set up our tents, and of course the fishermen got out right away. And look at that. That's within the first half hour to an hour. That's what we got. So 2 lake trout and a grayling. So dinner. Okay, and there's James. He's one of the guides. So he's from Ontario Sea Kayaking, level 4 instructor, and Carl, the other guide, is a level 3 who is from Halifax. So James had been to Ethan Island in 2019, and this trip was actually supposed to be for 2020, but for reasons, as we all know, is it got delayed 2 years. But when James was there before, he had done the circumnavigation all around the island, and this time decided that the better thing to do is just to stay on the west side, because that was the most attractive and had the best camping. So just another picture of that first campsite, and a lovely sunset. And this is the following morning. So when we woke up, to me that looks like an abalone shell. It's just beautiful the way you get the reflection of the clouds in the water. Mm-hmm. And this is where we went the first morning. So we start off at the south end. So this is where we were camped, and we make this distance here. That's where we camped. So you can see that you can easily circumnavigate the island, but the point of this trip was not how far can you go, is how well can you enjoy it all. And that was really the main thing. So this is the side, some of the cliffs along the way. And this is actually quite fun, because this is actually an opening in the rocks. A tandem could not fit through there, and even a single, you couldn't use your paddle. You'd go in and you'd have to use your hands to push yourself through there. But it's just kind of fun to do it. Just another idea of just the scenery. So this is our campsite for that night. it's called the Cliff Campsite, probably for good reason. So just again, another lovely place to be. And again, fishermen. And this is our checkered tablecloth. So when James and Carl went shopping, this was all done in coordination with Jack Pine, which is the local outfitter, so they were the ones who supplied all the kayaks. And we used their menu as well, but James and Carl went shopping for some fresh produce and stuff to add, so they came back with a checkered tablecloth too, because of course you need one of those on a trip, don't you? And this is the night, or this is the sunset, and the colors are outstanding. And there it is. So this is from my tent. So I always like to pitch my tent so I had a lovely view of the water. And again, the beauty of being camped on the west side is we always got sunset.
How late would that have been, Ann?
About 10:30.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So you went to bed late just because the sun was there. Okay, so this tells us, this is where we were camping. And this is the next day where we went up here. We stopped here for lunch, and this was our campsite. So this is a nice landing beach for where we had our lunch, and the idea. Oh, more fish. So we ended up having a very elongated lunch with a big fish fry. So there it is.
Wow.
And then the next day, our plan, so this is where we were, and our plan was to go here and around here, just to have a fun explore through that. But this is what we got. So it wasn't quite that bad when we started out, but that was our plot. So we almost got to the tip, but we came back because it was just building too much. And it was coming straight at us from the north. So even if we would have gone south, we would have to fight that all the way back. That didn't happen. So we got back, and that was actually the only day that we actually spent time in the woods, just so that it would be a bit warmer and not so windy. You can see, actually, it was in the other one as well, but the firebox. So that's how we cooked really for the first 6 days. There was lots of firewood, so didn't need to use any fuel at all. It worked out really well. So that tended to be a cooler day. But we decided because we couldn't go kayaking, we were going to go hiking instead. So there was this hillside, and I don't know if you can see, but these are our tents over here at that campsite.
That's nice.
So we came all the way up top. And then I'd also just like to show you, this is that big long peninsula, that Petai Peninsula that I showed you on the schematic before. And this area is where we'll be kayaking to the next day and around the other side. So it's just fun to see it. Oh, and then you have to have fun, right? So I'm kind of looking at the castle. And this is us coming back down.
Oh, neat.
Now this is kind of neat. This, I thought maybe this was kind of a cotton or something, but I couldn't figure out what it was, and I tried to Google search it, I put the picture in, but it couldn't tell me what it was, but I thought it was pretty anyway, so I took a picture of it. So that was the day that we had lasagna, and it was actually the perfect day because this takes longer. It was, working in the woods, but the problem is that, like, we had technical difficulties with the charcoal, right? So this is kind of took us, but the firebox is over here, and the charcoals were in here. Put it on this big slab. This is a big, one of those big pots that has the lasagna inside it. Put the charcoal over top of it, wrapped it in foil, and voila. It was about 2.5 hours later that we finally got lasagna. We didn't eat till about 9:30 that night. So, but it was so wonderful because it was the coldest night, and to get that lasagna into you when you were cold at a campsite was really quite a treat. This is lavender. It smells amazing. And we saw that on our hike and picked some of it, and we had lavender tea.
Nice.
Labrador, thank you.
Labrador.
Yeah, so this is the following morning, so what a difference a day makes, right? So we had a beautiful day to paddle over to the peninsula, and this was our plot here. So, so this is where we started, went to the point, went along, you'll see the cliffs here, lunch here, and then back this way. So there you can see where we're headed, the peninsula. So really nice paddling conditions. This is the rock face there, and you can see that says, welcome to the Tangin. So that actually translates to land of the ancestors in the Dene language. And so this is actually the newest national park in Canada. It was opened in 2019. And my notes didn't come up on this when this was translated over here, but I think it's something like 65,000 acres. So it's a big area, but it's all preserved area for the Dene. So this is the cliffs on that far side of the peninsula. They're very, very tall, very, very majestic. And when you look up at them, you kind of hope that none of those fall down on top of you.
Yeah.
And this is after lunch, we went to the top, and this is what it looks like from the top. So it's pretty impressive to see that. And this is along that side as well. And this is us having lunch. So again, on the east side is relatively shallow. And then the big cliff on the opposite side. So there's our ending table again with our lunch. And again, more fish. Okay. Just again, the lovely scenery from where we climbed up after lunch. And this is on our way back. And again, beautiful sunsets. You know, it was really quite amazing. So now we're on our way back. So we went from here back down to the cliff campsite. And that's the other side of the cliff campsite. And guess what? I finally caught a fish.
Yay.
So this was getting to be day 6, and I thought, you know what? I brought my fishing rod, changed my lure. I've got a bigger story to tell, but I won't bore you with that. But now I have a fish story, and I actually caught the biggest fish. So that was cool. And that fed the 10 of us with some left over that night.
Wow.
And then again, the 10th view. And then this, this is our campsite, the cliffside, and we went here to a place called Ethan Cafe. And this is back, going through that little opening again on the way back. And this is the Ethan Cafe. And I tried to find the history about that, but I don't really know. I don't know whether it's fishermen who built that or whatever. But anyways, it's a nice sheltered area, and it's actually pretty luxurious because there's actually even a toilet. Actually, there's 2 toilets. You can see there one. You just had to make sure that you didn't pitch your tent in the wrong spot. So that day was a little bit windier and it was overcast. And James decided that it would be a good idea to put up a tarp. Even though he did get the weather forecasts broadcast into him every day, it really wasn't that reliable. But it was really a good thing that this tarp was set up. You can see all the kayaks, most of them are upside down because we got a huge rainstorm. And it was the perfect day for a rainstorm because we were able to sit in a picnic table, around a picnic table with the tarp, and there was actually a covered cooking area too. I mean, how perfect is that? And then what does your guide do when it's the middle of a thunderstorm and pouring rain? Makes snowmoons.
Wow.
Isn't that nice? And then this is the lovely rainbow at the end of the storm. This is the following morning as we're getting ready to go down to our pickup spot, because really the only thing that we needed to worry about on this trip was getting back to the pickup spot for the following day. Whatever we did in between didn't really matter. So here's some ravens. So these are some wildlife that we saw. Eagles. Eagles have a massive range of where you find them. So nice blue there. That was on the shore as we were paddling back that particular day. I don't know what these birds are. Maybe somebody, one of you does, but they were really entertaining as they just kind of ran along the waterfront. And then James took this picture. The last night we were there was absolutely calm, like glass. And there were these two loons swimming around.
Yeah.
He's got a much better camera than I, so I just borrowed his picture for this. And this is the following day. Everybody was really excited to know that the plane actually was arriving on time. And then this is the process. So the next group comes in. We get all their stuff off the plane. We put all our stuff on the plane, and away we go. And then this is that, you remember the schematic map at the very beginning that showed all of the water. Well, this is what it was like flying all the way between an island and Yellowknife. And then we're back at Yellowknife again. Thank you. So that was it.
Well, I was wondering about the color. You said there was some brilliant sort of orange colors on the cliffs, and
Yeah.
is that growth or is it
Yeah, I think it's lichen.
lichen? Okay.
Yeah, because where we were having lunch, you could see it all on the rock that we were
Right.
sitting on. Yeah.
Pretty.
Yes.
What were your daytime and nighttime temperatures like?
Well, that's a really interesting question because it varied. The coldest night was the night after that storm, and there were a couple of nights that I was actually pretty cold. When we were eating our dinner, it was like 11 degrees, and I'm sure that it fell down to about 4. That particular night, I was actually warmer than I was on the nights before because I finally figured out the proper layers to wear. Took me a little while to do that, but I know that it was the coldest night because when I got up in the morning, my shoes were really, really cold. And then at sometimes, the last day when we got back, I'm sure that it was close to 30 degrees. Like it was really hot, and just everybody but one went in the water, and we stayed in there for a while, at that place where the landing and the pickup spot. So it was a big variety of temperatures.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
What time of the year was it and how bad were bugs?
No bugs. The only time there were bugs was when we were in the woods that time. But on the beach it was fine. So the day one was July 31st, and then we came back 9 days later. Yes.
So how did you come up with the idea of going on this trip?
Well, I've been on a number of trips with Ontario Sea Kayaking before, and they put up, the various trips that they're doing. And I actually wanted to go on this trip in 2020 and had signed up for it then. Like, I've always been intrigued by the North, but never had an opportunity to go there. So I thought, I've just got to go there and see this place. And it was so wonderful to be there, part of the wilderness. I mean, we did see a few fishing boats, but you didn't need a fishing boat to catch fish, as you can see. And we saw one couple that was there in a canoe. They had been dropped off from Hay River. But it was a pretty special opportunity to be there. Any other questions?
I just
just wondered about the sea state. So when the wind came up, it looked like the waves certainly came up
Yeah.
quickly. It's a big lake. It must get
It's a huge lake, so so you do have to be careful. Like one of the options that I think James and Carl were thinking about was to see if we could go to the other, that where all those cliffs were on the side of the peninsula. But they weren't sure if there was a campsite there or not. And the thinking was that, if the wind did come up, because again, you couldn't always predict, even if you had people giving you information, it would be a long ways to come back. And because of those tall cliffs, there's no place to bail. Like you have to make sure that you can get from point A to point B because there is no shoreline.
And what was the name of the company and what was the approximate cost?
Yeah, Ontario Sea Kayaking, it was about $4,000, and then you had to pay for your flights above that, but they supplied all the foods and the guides. Now, they worked in conjunction with Jack Pine. So Jack Pine is the local outfitter, and so the group that came after us, they were led by Jack Pine. So I think that, that would be, who you would contact, probably is Jack Pine. I know that Ontario Sea Kayaking is having another trip this year, but they might already be full because they've only got 8 spots. I think that I saw somewhere that Blue Dog was doing something at Great Slave Lake as well, so I'm not sure quite what they're doing or whether they're working with Jack Pine as well. I don't know if there's any other outfitters there. Like, we didn't see any other kayakers when we were there. And the beauty, too, is how quiet it was. What I find when I camp, usually in the morning you're woken up by birds or frogs or ocean or, something. But there were days that I would wake up in the morning and hear nothing because the sea was, the lake was totally calm. There were hardly, I can't remember hearing songbirds, and so unless there was a little bit of a wind, you heard nothing. And you could always tell what was going on by listening to, what is the sea saying to you? What is the water telling you today when you're waking up? But it was just the most amazing thing to be in a wilderness that was silent, really beautiful.
Question about that new national park you mentioned.
Yes.
That's quite extensive,
Yes.
much bigger than the area you were in, I guess.
Absolutely.
They called it the English land of the ancients?
Yeah, the land of the ancestors.
Ancestors.
Yeah.
And so was that, is that area somehow significant to the origin of the peoples there?
It's part of, the Dene people, really, you can see from the map that I showed you from the museum, they traveled all through the Northwest Territories. So I don't really know the background of the park, apart from it was part of an agreement that they came to with Parks Canada through their people. When you look at that, and Effin Island is this teeny little dot, and then where we were was just at the very entrance, and this whole massive park area, it's huge, so I think they felt pretty proud of that, to be able to do that. And I don't know, how protected the lands are from people being able to camp there or whatever. But anyways, it's pretty good. Yes?
Roughly how many nautical miles and kilometers did you travel?
I think we did about 94 altogether. So the first day, I had all those stats in my little notes that didn't come up on the transfer, but I think the first day we did over 16.
Kilometers or?
Kilometers. Kilometers, yeah. So my All Trails gives me kilometers, not miles. So, and then the shortest day was our last day where we just did 8.
It's pretty small.
So what it was it was very reasonable in terms of distances covered. And as you know, anytime you go somewhere in the wilderness or even around here, you have to be very cognizant of the weather because you don't know what you're going to get. And so you can't be too ambitious when you know that you have to be picked up at a certain time. So I think that what was nice is we actually stayed at the same campsite for 3 nights in a row at the top there and did a variety of different things. And it was fun to be able to hike too, because if we had paddled that day, we wouldn't have the opportunity to hike and see all the surroundings. So sometimes it's actually a good thing that you can't always paddle.
What level of kayak is the trip geared for?
Probably level 1. I think you need to be at least a level 1. I mean, I would look on their website. Maybe a 1 or 2, I can't remember. But generally, when Ontario Sea Kayaking takes a group, they normally know who's going because most of us have done courses with them. There was one woman there who wasn't known, but was a friend of somebody who was known to Ontario Sea Kayaking. But I think all their courses or all their trips say recommended for level 1 or level 2, whatever that is. So they're very strict about that. They won't take any comers on their paddles. So I think that there are some paddling tour groups that they will take people who don't have any experience. So that's going to be a very different kind of experience for those who do know how to paddle and may want to be capable of slightly more difficult conditions or go farther. But I think when you're going into a place like this, you have to be prepared to be in some rougher water, and you have to be able to go a certain distance. Not that we were doing humongous distances, but you had to be able to do that. Yes.
Did the company also supply tents and sleeping bags and things?
You could if you wanted to.
Oh, so you carried some of your own stuff?
So Jack Pine, the local outfitter, people could rent from them.
Okay.
And actually there was one fellow who rented a dry suit from them as well. So.
But you could just bring your own gear and just rent the boat?
Absolutely. Yeah, so most of us brought our own tents, sleeping bags, and dry suits and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a big place, Northwest Territories. So
Yes.
did your experience give you a taste for more of it?
Well, and that's a really interesting question too, because one of the women who was on the trip is an avid canoeist as well. So she was heading straight from that trip to paddle on the Nahani River. So again, you start talking about this stuff and it kind of gets you thinking, but I'm not a canoeist and I think I need to have more skills for that. But Jack Pine leads canoe trips all throughout the Northwest Territories, a lot of the rivers, and there's, I think, 2 other outfitters who do that. So there's lots to explore. So it all depends on where you want to spend your time. But we live in a magnificent country, with lots of opportunities.
Where were the people from in the group?
Mostly from Ontario, because it was from Ontario Sea Kayaking. I mean, I'm affiliated with them because I'm from Ontario, and I did my level 1 and level 2 through Ontario Sea Kayaking. One of the fellows moved from Ontario to Calgary, so he was connected. And then there was a woman from Edmonton who was a friend of the guy from Calgary who came on the trip. So, but most of them are Ontario just because that's where everybody knows each other from.
Before I thank Anne, I'm curious, how many people in this room have been up to the Northwest Territories? So, I know Don used to live there. Has anybody else lived there in the past? That was really interesting. I mean, the furthest north I've ever been is Fort Nelson. So maybe one day I would love to. Really want to thank you for your presentation tonight. It was very informative and interesting. And to say thank you is our much sought after, Siska. There's no meeting